All right, so Three Ninjas Podcast, Domino, Hess, Jones, Bobby, and right now we have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Boom Shakalaka himself, Tim Kitzrow.
Tonight's matchup, Domino versus Mr. Boom Shakalaka. Here's the tip. Talk fast and loud. Kaboom!
Yeah, that shit is amazing. So now,
How you doing, Domino?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing well.
How's your day been?
Well, your ass just got kicked by all your wires right there. You know, they kicked your ass big time.
I don't know what the fuck happened because it
We
worked
need more
over there.
wires.
It worked over there. I bring it here. All of a sudden, it doesn't want to work when I talk to somebody I want to talk to.
Hey, man.
Don't know what happened.
Hey, when you're in this business, it's always tough. You know, too many wires just mess you up. I think you got one of your dreadlocks plugged in by a mistake. That's what it is.
I fuck with it. Now, my first question is, how have you never played NBA Jam?
Pretty easy. I'm a guy that was not really of the video game generation. Like by the time I went off to college, there was like Pac-Man, whatever, a couple of early games, 77, and the beer money was very important in college. I didn't make a lot of money. I had to pay off part of my student loan at like 15 hours a week at about $1.80 an hour.
Okay.
And that was living money. And so when you go into the pub for a beer and then you have the choice between a video game and a beer, it's an easy choice for me.
So you never had any quarters and be like, let me just hear my voice.
I mean, I played Pac-Man a little, but I also realized quickly, like, if you keep playing it, I just lost like 2 or 3 beers that I could have had that night, which is, it's a lot of beer.
Now,
and then later, when I was making the video games, I started doing all these pinball games, and I would go out to Midway after the game was created, and they had an NBA Jam in their cafeteria, but I would be doing voiceover for another game, and they give you like a 20-minute break or half hour for lunch. I go in there, and I came up to the game, and everybody's playing it at the company, and they're all really good at it. And they, hey, you want to play? And I get in, all the buttons and joysticks. And I'm like a kid, like a 4-year-old who reaches up and grabs and starts hitting buttons, and they think they're playing. That was me. I embarrassed myself, and I didn't have the patience in that short time. And everybody looked at me like, "What are you wasting our time for? You don't know what you're doing." And I love playing real basketball, virtual basketball. So it just wasn't fun to me. Plus, the few times that I would see it, I wanted to just watch the game play and hear and see how the voice was integrated and how it worked. I was fascinated. It's the first time I had heard my voice in a game like that. When you do pinball, your vocal calls they only happen at certain moments when you trigger something or tells you what to do. Go up the left ramp or blah, blah, blah. You do a little dialogue. But the constant play-by-play was so unique. And I was still just really digging on like, wow, I'm the play-by-play dude for the NBA in this game. And I wanted to see, as I said, critique it, like listen to it. Like how could I get better or whatever. So, I would go over, sit on the cruising game and just, get in and start smashing Corvettes and Mustangs. And I was one of the best totalers of muscle cars and cruising. My initials were on the leaderboard for crashed cars.
Wow. Now, what was the audition process to actually get this job as the announcer? No audition.
So I started doing voices for the pinball games in '88.
Okay.
And it was Gilligan's Island, it was Popeye, it was Twilight Zone, Elvira. 15 titles later, I'm kind of like a session musician, like the Motown, had their great James Jameson bass player, the great drummers, whatever. So I'm a session dude. That's the way I think of myself.
Okay.
Whenever they needed a voice, I was the guy. I was the bass player, or the drummer, or whatever.
Okay.
And they go, oh, Tim's pretty damn good. He can pretty much do all these range of voices and characters. We're working on a new game. It's an NBA video game. At this point, as I said, just doing pinball. And they said, hey, go to Tim. He's the guy.
Okay.
So I was just given the game. And then after that, and it was a success, Mark Turmel, the creator, said, hey, we're doing Blitz. You're the guy.
Okay.
And I just became the guy. And then Slugfest and NHL hit. So 4 titles. And I wrote all the scripts after NBA Jam. I did Blitz and I did Slugfest. I didn't write his because I'm not a hockey guy.
Okay. So you were given a script for NBA Jam. Yeah,
and that original script was the producer, John Hay, who wrote the music. On Sundays, he would watch the Game of the Week with Marv Albert because that was basically how you got your NBA. It was the game. Yeah, I forget. I think it was NBA, NBC. That was Marv Albert. But he was the voice of the NBA. So they wanted NBA Jam to be a sim game. It was called an arcade game now. But it didn't mean because it was in the arcade, they were going to try to simulate real basketball.
Okay.
And it was the best graphics ever, the first motion capture in a sports game. So at that point, they were like, okay, so it's got to sound like a real game. I'm the real announcer. Well, he would sit down and listen to Marv Albert and just write down all those lines that he would hear every Sunday. Gave them to me, can't buy a bucket, ugly shot, puts up a brick, Vinnie Johnson from the Pistons, he would say he was known as the human microwave. So when he'd come in, Marv Albert would go, Vinnie is heating up. Vinnie Johnson is on fire. And Marv always had that upper register excited. And that's my version of him, just to capture that excitement, that feel of the NBA on Sunday, the big game of the week. So that's how I approached it. Then, of course, they added the crazy dunks and the fire, which was they never intended to. It was just kind of like accidents while they were tuning up the game. Someone was just kind of screwing around. They made the guy jump higher, and some people started laughing like, hey, that's funny. He's like, oh, over the hey, we do Summers. And then there was a big argument. It's like, well, no, that's not realistic. We're not making a clown game. This is realistic simulated basketball.
Right.
And we can't have him on fire. And they can't because
can't have him on fire.
It was a major argument between the two creators of which direction they should go. And it finally obviously won out with the crazy over the top stuff. But otherwise, it's as realistic as the technology allowed at that time for likeness, everything else, and the pace of the game that was so fast. That's one of the things that's so addictive about it.
Right.
One of the reasons is it's like crack, and Mark was an expert, Mark Tamel, at knowing how to keep the quarters coming, keep that adrenaline going. It's like fast, and then he gives you that moment to you put in the more quarters, whatever. And the CPU had to catch up if you were in a blowout, because if you're getting your ass kicked, you're probably not going to put in more quarters or whatever. But if you think you have a chance at the end, so there's like this rubber banding how to keep the game close. But yeah.
Okay.
Very cool how it all came about.
Now, were you allowed to improv at all?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure I came up with, some of the lines like, slam a, jam a ding-dong or whatever. But as I said early on, I improv'd a lot on the pinball games. But this, I said, was pretty straight ahead. But I've watched so much basketball in my life that it's in my head. So I'm sure on every take of, a three-pointer or two, any two-pointer, I was reading the line and then doing a couple of my own versions, and I'll never be able to know which were mine or which were the original script. But by the time we got to Blitz, I started to do the writing. That's when it became more comedic. And then when I did Slugfest and NBA Jam in 2010 and 11, I wrote the entire script, and that's when you get the crazier, more kind of like comedy meets sports game that's like, from downtown, and like rummaging through my wife's top dresser drawer finds nothing but nylon. And I love it when you call me Big Blocka. The Block Doctor is in. We'll see you now. Take a seat. A guy, a guy who misses all the time, and we all know the guy who's called the chucker, right?
Yeah.
When you play a pickup game.
Yeah.
So when you bounce off a three off the rim, I go, "Dear Rim, I miss you. Love, Chuck." So weird shit.
Now, who came up with Boom Shakalaka?
Me.
Okay. Now, have you patented that?
What?
Have you patented?
No, I'm an idiot.
Why not?
I was unable to do it, and I'm frustrated even talking about it. No, the name. The Boom Shakalaka, interestingly enough, existed somewhere in the culture. Like you can Google it, like origin of Boom Shakalaka. There are different things you'll hear and see, but it was never used in sports before as a phrase.
Right.
But it actually came from one of the sound guys listening to Sly and the Family Stone, a song called "I Want to Take You Higher." I want to take you higher. Boo shakalaka like a boo shakalaka. Bow down down. That was the chorus. Boo shakalaka. No M, no boom.
Yeah.
And the guy listening to it like, hey man, that'd be cool to hear in that game. Tell Tim to say boom shakalaka while I was in the studio. So my guy goes, hey Tim, say boom shakalaka. I go, what the hell's boom shakalaka? He goes, I don't know. John told me just say it. So I go, boom shakalaka, and I said it, and that was it. How you doing, folks? Hey, the Boom Shakalaka store is still open. Don't be afraid. Stop by. Everything must go, but as of 5 p.m. today, it's the On Fire Fire Sale. Sorry for the interruption.
That's okay. I love
working, man. It's a shop. It's a store.
Sell
Daddy's got to put food on the table.
Right.
Now, these athletes are like, I had to turn down that $210 million because I got to put food on the table for my kids. Like, what kind of fucking food do you put on the table in that house?
They're fucking liars.
You got bowls and caviar from breakfast on your Cap'n Crunch?
Now, how does
my house put food on the table?
How does it feel to be bigger than the game? Because I feel like
you put your Cheerios in a Ferrari every day on the fucking table. Now, that's the food. That's going to cost you $200 million. But you put your Fruit Loops in a bowl like normal people. Right. You don't need $200 million for 1,000 lifetimes.
Now, how does it feel to be bigger than the actual game? Because I feel like
I'm only 6'1", dude.
No, I feel like you have top 3 sayings in like video game history. So there's Hadouken, there's Get Over Here, and there's Boom Shakalaka.
Hey man, the hits just keep coming with Mr. Boom Shakalaka. Like Lionel Richie said, all night long, Boom Shakalaka.
Now, is there a part of you that wants to be known for something else other than that?
It's the left side of me wants to be known for being a GQ model. The right side of me wants to be a drummer.
A drummer.
Yep.
So what's your musical background?
It is drumming. It is rock and roll and and soul and blues and funk. I'm just a drummer. Bought a drum set when I was young. And hey, everybody, the Boom Shakalaka store is still open. Don't be frightened of the microphone. When I was a kid, saved up my money, $440 worth of leaf raking, snow shoveling, lawnmower cutting money, bought a big set of Rogers drums, and I never gave up, even though I knew it wasn't going to be my livelihood. I loved them so much, took them to college, took them in a $100 Volkswagen from New York to Chicago when I moved, kept playing. I said, I'm going to play at least once a month, weekend band, Sunday afternoon, so I'm with a band. And one of the guys says, hey, I work out at the pinball company, and we need a voice for Gilligan's Island to do Mr. Howell. And you're at Second City, you're an actor. Can you do it? I go, Gilligan, maybe we could bribe Kona. And he goes, man, that's good. Can you do? And then as soon as I got that, he said, can you do Twilight Zone? You're traveling through another dimension, a dimension not only of sight, a dimension of sound. You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone. Can you do Popeye? Well, blow me down. It's the Sea Hack. And so gig after gig, it was because I was playing drums, following my passion, that I ended up in a place where no one would think, you don't go looking for a voiceover job playing in a band. I would have never thought to go out and look for voiceover work. I'm looking for stage work. So yeah, it's like people go, how do you get into the industry? It's like, for me, I was prepared. You know, I have a background, I've, talent, but it was luck meeting that moment that I was prepared for when luck came my way. So you had to be in the right position to go, can you do it? I could have fallen on my face and not been able to do it.
Okay. Now, how's things been since, I guess, like, what was the initial reaction to NBA Jam? Like, did your family know that you did the voice? Did your friends know?
As I said, no one in my family was like, video gamers, 5 brothers, 2 sisters, and it was just, I was making $50 an hour, like, oh, cool, Tim did a little something else and whatever. But then it was when the nieces and nephews and my son, got into it. It's no big deal. But now, they're pretty impressed. Like, wow, 30 years later, that really was something.
What was the first time that you actually realized that you had an impact on people's lives where you were the voice of NBA Jam?
I had really no awareness until just in the last few years where I started to do some of these shows, because I never met the fans. I didn't know these shows existed, and I was out promoting Mutant Football League, which I did a few years ago. So I went to a show up in Milwaukee, and then the promoter said, hey man, why don't you come to our show by yourself next year? And then I came to this Connecticut show, and the first time meeting fans, and they're putting together like, oh man, you're the voice. And the first thing I heard is, you're the voice of my childhood. Oh dude, I had no idea. I knew people liked the game. I knew the game was popular, but I didn't know that there was such an impact from my voice and how they felt about me and how many hours of their life or quarters for those who played the arcade, the impact that I had. And I hear incredible stories all the time about the impact of the game. And a guy from Lebanon today in Beirut grew up in kind of violent stuff going on as a kid. There was an NBA Jam cabinet in some restaurant, and he used to play it, and he loved to say boom shock, like he's like 5, and he thought that was English because it's it's an American basketball game, and someone said like, oh, do you know how to speak English? And he goes, boom shakalaka. That was English, and that's what he knew. He knew English.
Holy shit. Now, what's the strangest thing that someone's had you say in the voice?
I've said stranger shit than anyone can tell me to say. So, I mean, that's just the way it goes. I mean, improv for me, like, I was at Second City because I love to just riff and improv. So, the stuff comes up. Like when I some of the lines I just told you about, rummaging through his girlfriend's top dresser drawer, he finds nothing but nylon. Or he comes up with a fisherman's nightmare, nothing but net. And I cannot lie, but I like big dunks and I cannot lie. It's like, when I write, it's the same as improvising. You're just at the keyboard, you're hearing the shit go in your head, and it just keeps rattling off. It's like, a rapper probably. You're spitting fire. You ready to spit some fire? Time to drop the bass, DJ. Boom shakalaka. And then I just start spitting fire on the keys. In the old days, write it on a legal yellow pad first, and just riffing and riffing and riffing.
Now, have you ever thought about getting into comedy, writing at all?
Well, I realized, some of the guys that I used to audition with, like Steve Carell from The Office and those people, they went out.
Just a subtle name drop.
Well, but I mean, that's what it was like back in Chicago. It was like Tim Meadows, Chris Farley, Tina Fey, Stephen Colbert, Bob Odenkirk. And I'm trying to get into the same company they're trying to get into. I never made it to the main stage. It was obviously frustrating. But they went out to do their things. Tina Fey had 30 Rock. Steve Carell had his thing. And it wasn't until years later I realized, well, I got into the video game industry and the first person in the video game industry to create content. I wasn't just a voice. As I told you, the first game I did just like read the NBA Jam script. But other than that, like the flavor of NFL Blitz, Slugfest, all this stuff I'm telling you about, the new NBA Jam with EA Sports, that was my world that I created, writing and performance. And I realized I'm the first person with that Second City, kind of Saturday Night Live, Dana Carvey, like the people who went to do their thing. They're known for their catchphrases. And Church Lady, I'm known for Boom Shakalaka. He's on fire.
Right.
I've created this wealth of like comedy, humor, and sports stuff that everybody's grown up with. And I'm proud that, I'm the first guy to do voice for all 4 major league sports and to write all his own material. So I am a content creator.
Okay. Now, are you the voice of something that people don't know about, like, or is just lesser known?
Actually, most people don't know that I have that I told you about the pinball games. Like, I have 15 titles, and I just did my second Elvira game. I did World Cup Soccer. I did a cameo on Deadpool from Stern Pinball recently. So all these crazy old pinball games and new pinball games, and then Mutant Football League, which is a remake of a '93 Sega game that used to have a Saturday morning cartoon show.
Yep.
A remake by the same creator a few years ago. I wrote the script, voiced 3 characters, and now it's called Mutant Football League. It's on Twitch. It's you can go to the mutantfootballleague.com. It's one of the coolest games I've ever been a part of, and the creativity, the writing, the amount of voice and dialogue in it. It's once again, it's like an Adult Swim kind of cartoon. I'm voicing this post-apocalyptic football world. And it's truly, a great game that if it had a big company behind it, it would be big. And if it was the old days where like EA Sports or Midway was behind it, but instead there are so many games today. It was an independent, production. It was a Kickstarter, $1 million. The whole game was made for $1 million. So,
oh wow,
yeah, Mutant Football League.
Now, is there a game that you want to be the voice of, or that that you see out there that you want to maybe announce for?
First of all, because I really don't even follow other video games. I don't play like whatever. I wouldn't even know what is out there.
Like, I would love to hear you in Fortnite or some shit like that.
I don't even know what it is, really.
Fortnite?
It's crazy. Yeah, I don't know what it is.
Oh my god.
So, but I actually did. If anyone plays Dota, I was asked to do a voice pack, and it's still waiting to be released on Valve. So you can have, like, you're playing this, like, Dota crazy world, that's all, in the olden days, and, crazy, shit, like, but I'm just doing my shit over the top. You can buy that as a voice pack. Like Rick and Morty did a voice pack. So if you're tired of just playing the straight game, you can have the crazy shit in your ear, and that's me.
Right. All right. So now, do you guys have any questions?
He's saying, like, what time we go?
Not. You asked about, what, Mutiny something? Mutant League Mutiny.
We're working on a completely updated new version with all the rest of the NFL teams parodied and players that weren't in the original. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so how can people contact you? What's your social media? How can people reach you?
You want to go to timkitzrow.com or MrBoomShakalaka.com. That's my website. You can see the videos I've done for NBA teams, including the Warriors. Like the Warriors for the last few years when they were winning their championships, I would do a wrap-up of their playoffs and finals series, and they would put those on their Jumbotron and social media. Curry, with time winding down, what's for dinner? It's fast, easy to make, and a real crowd pleaser. Curry surprise, kaboom! So you can see that stuff there, and you can follow me at Tim_Kitzrow Twitter, and I'm on Instagram, Tim Kitzrow. So, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Great talking to you, Domino.
Great talking to you. Now, is there any way that we can get a drop?
Yeah, drop it on me.
Okay. I don't know what I want you to say. Let me think.
I don't know what I want you to say. Let me think.
All right.
All right. Yeah, just like you're a kid. That's me. Just messing with you.
All right. So how about 3 Ninjas Podcast? They're heating up.
3 Ninja Podcast. They're heating up.
Best podcast in Connecticut. Boom shakalaka.
The 3 Ninja Podcast is heating up. The best podcast in Connecticut. Boom shakalaka.
I love it. Thank you.
All right, you ready to drop the bass, TJ? Kaboom!
Thank you, man. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.